Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Geeked. Today we're going to be talking about an introduction to logic functions. And you can find this worksheet below in the description for this video, so feel free to work alongside as I do. Logic functions, so let's get right into it. They are used to determine when certain criteria are met, and primarily they return a true or a false value. And the way that Excel reads true and false values is that a true is a 1 while a false is a 0. So what you're trying to do is really translate that information into something more meaningful. We will be covering three types of main logic functions, which are the if function, the and function, and the or function. And just a quick note for you guys, and or functions cannot be used independently to obtain meaningful results. And what that means is that if you're going to use and or functions on their own, they're only going to return true or false values, which cannot really be used to understand the data, and we're going to show you how to convert that data into something more meaningful using and or functions alongside other functions as well. So let's get right into it. We have the if function first off, and we have prepared an example right here, which goes like this. We have the sales related was sales by various sales agents employed by ABC Corp. So we have the sales agents in this column and the months in which they made the sales in the row. And what we want to do, the catch here is that if there is a sales target of 10,000 for each salesperson, and if this sales target is met, every salesperson earns a commission of $1,000, and if that condition is not met, then they don't earn a bonus, therefore no bonus. I just want to point out to you guys that you'll notice that there are no grid lines in any of my data, and I've left some of the grid lines here on purpose. The reason why I do the reason why I get rid of the grid lines is because it makes my work look much neater. The way that you can get rid of the grid lines in Excel is that you simply select the data that you want to clean up, and then you go up here to the Fill tab, and you hit the drop down option, and you click on the white fill, and there you go. So now you'll notice that your work is much more cleaner, and it makes the data look much more appealing to the user. Right, so let's get into it. Now what I'm trying to do is that I want to determine whether Adam or William or John and so on, whether they earned a commission or not. And basically I'm trying to translate these numbers into one of these two options. Okay, so let's get into it. So we're going to be using the if function. So I'm going to say, to start off with any function in Excel, you always say equals to, and I'm going to say if, I'm going to open the bracket, and then Excel is going to ask me for the first input. It's going to ask for the logical test. So my logical test is that the sales have to be greater than $10,000. So let's see what we have to do. We're going to take the sales for Adam in January because that's the cell we're in. We're going to hit that. So B4 is our cell. And that has to be greater than $10,000. That's our sales target, D11. Okay, so D11, we have to lock it in, as I explained in a prior video. We need to lock values in so that they don't change when you drag the data across, meaning we want dynamic data. Okay, so we're going to lock that in, and then the next argument is value if true. So what value do I want if this condition is met? I want $1,000, meaning that's the commission that this person is going to earn if they made sales of greater than $10,000. So I'm going to hit the $1,000 option. And again, I'm going to lock it in because I don't want it to move when I drag the data across and down. Lastly, my value of false. So that's the last and the final remaining option that I have, value of false. So if the sales are less than 10,000, then there will be no bonus. So I'm going to hit the no bonus option, and I'm going to simply lock it in using the dollar values. And keep in mind, guys, I'm working on a Mac right now, and you can't really use F4 to lock dollar values in. But if you're working on a PC or a Windows, you can definitely use F4 to lock the values in. So what you're going to do is you're going to go on the value and you're going to hit F4. So what it does is that it puts the dollar values in for you, and you don't have to do it manually. All right, so we're going to close the bracket here. We're going to hit Control Enter, and there you go. So it gives you no bonus. And now my job is pretty easy because what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to drag this data across, and then I'm going to drag it down so that Excel autofills the rest for me. So just to use shortcuts, I encourage you guys to use the mouse as less as possible. So what you're going to do here is you're going to hit shift, you're going to hold the shift key, and you're going to use the arrow key to the right as many times as needed, and you're going to say control R, meaning control right. So what that does is that it just drags the data across, and it shows you whether this person earned a commission or not, and in which month they earned a commission. Same procedure, you're going to go downwards using the holding shift and the down arrow key, and then you're going to say control D for control D, meaning down. So you're moving downwards in the table. And there you go. Now you can see that the entire table has been populated, and we can really verify whether this data is correct or not, because this is a pretty simple example. So notice that Adam made $11,701 worth of sales in March, therefore he received a bonus of $1,000. Anna, on the other hand, made $4,664 of sales, and she did not receive a bonus in January, and so on. So all of this data can be really fact-checked, but primarily if you get all of your calculations right, you should not be worried about whether you got the answer right or not. It's just that you have to be very, very vigilant about where you're putting the dollar values, and if you got the information and the inputs right or not. Just to double check, you can always click on your data, and you can see that Excel is moving one cell to the right every time you go across, as you can see over here, and it's going to move one cell down over there every time you move downwards. Okay, so that's, again, Excel recognizes patterns, and then you want to input your patterns correctly so that Excel does what you want it to do. So that's a pretty straightforward example. Let's get into if and and functions, because I also want to show you guys how and functions are used first off on their own, and how you can combine them with if. Okay, so the question here is, suppose students at the University of Halifax need greater than 65% on their core courses and greater than 50% on other courses to maintain a clear academic standing. All right, so here we have a list of students at the university, and then we have their core course, other course 1, and other course 2. We're going to assume that they only take 3 courses in this semester. And what we want to do is we want to determine whether they have a clear academic standing or whether they're on probation. And in order to have a clear academic standing, they need to meet these requirements. So 65% or greater, 65% greater than 65 on their core courses and greater than 50% on other courses. Right, so let's get into it. The reason, because we have 3 criteria that we have to meet in this example, we're going to use the AND function, because what the AND function does is that it facilitates multiple inputs and multiple criteria that have to be met. So we're going to say equals to AND. We're going to open the bracket, logic 1. So what's the first logical test that I have to prove? I have to prove that the core course grade over here is greater than 65%, right? Okay, so that's the first test. The second test is that other course 1 over here has to be greater than 50%. Okay, and then the last one is going to be the other course 2 has to be greater than 50%. Okay, and now if I close the bracket and hit enter, it's going to give me a true value. Okay, so what that really means is that this first person met the criteria that I was looking for. And if I were to drag this down, so the way I did that, just to clarify, I did Control Shift and the down arrow key in order to move down to the end of the array. Again, Control Shift down arrow key and then Control D. That gives me the rest of the list. All right, so again, true, false. Now, let's say you're someone external to the University of Halifax and you don't really know what this means. You don't have this information available to you. So what does true or false mean to you? Like, they're asking for academic standing and you're giving them a true or false. So that really is not something meaningful. And then going back to what I said at the start of the video, this data is not meaningful in trying to explain it to someone who doesn't know what the background to this information is. So in order to counter that problem, let's first get rid of all of the cells except for the first one. And we're going to put this AND function within an if function now. So what that does, you'll see here, is that if I put an if before the and I open the bracket, now the logical test becomes the entire and function. So in the prior example, remember that our logical test was that the sales had to be greater than 10,000. But in this case, we have multiple criteria that have to be met. And the and function now becomes our logical test. After that, it's pretty straightforward because now the value of true, I know that. The value of, if this condition is met, the value of true is clear. And again, I'm going to have to lock it in because I don't want it to be moving along with my data. And next up is on probation. So again, I'm going to hit on probation, H11, and I'm going to lock it in manually. Obviously, you can use F4, just as I said in the previous on the previous question. You can always use F4 in order to make sure that your data is locked in place. Okay, and then you close the bracket and then you hit enter. There you go. So now it's been converted from a true to a clear, which is much more meaningful than just a generic true or false. And then again, Control Shift down arrow key and then Control D. And there you go. So now I've converted my true or false into clear or on probation. And then again, if you were to show this to someone, it is definitely more meaningful than just a generic true or false. Alright guys, so that's part one of this video. In the next part, the second part of this video, we're going to be talking about if and or functions along with nested ifs. Stay tuned, please.